Okay, so like imagine this, right? You're dropped in the middle of nowhere, totally isolated. Your mission, survive. Oh, and you get 10 grand, $10,000 for every single day you manage to stick it out. How long do you think you'd last?
That's a really interesting question, actually. Gets right to the core of what makes us tick, our survival instincts, what we value.
Totally. And that's exactly what Mr. Beast is putting to the test in his latest YouTube challenge. Two guys, completely random, Haas and Grizz, airdropped into the wilderness, and we get to see the whole thing unfold, the struggles, how their friendship holds up, and of course that giant pile of cash dangling in front of them.
It's like a social experiment almost.
Yeah,
Stripping everything back to the basics, seeing how humans react under that kind of pressure.
absolutely. And the video, it drops us right into the action. Haas and Grizz, they're meeting for the first time just moments before being whisked off to this remote, I don't even know, island, forest, somewhere remote. They've got the bare minimum enough food and water to last them like 5 days, some clothes, a fire starter. Definitely not glamping.
Nope, not at all. And that's the point, isn't it? By limiting their resources right off the bat, the challenge forces them to tap into those primal survival instincts. Shelter, water, fire, suddenly. These aren't just things you read about in the survival guide. They're essential for getting through the next hour.
Yeah, no kidding. And speaking of essential food, or the lack of it, becomes a major issue, like immediately. Those initial supplies disappear fast, and before you know it, they're scavenging for anything they can find. Every last crumb matters.
And that's where the psychological aspect kicks in. It's one thing to deal with physical hunger, but imagine the mental strain, the uncertainty, being completely isolated and constantly having to adapt to new challenges. Every decision they make carries this huge weight.
It's intense, for sure. But then on day two, they get a little surprise. A parachute drops down, and it's carrying $10,000 cash. Talk about a pick-me-up, right?
Yeah.
Though I guess, even in the wilderness, money can't solve everything.
Exactly. And this actually highlights a theme we see throughout the challenge, that constant push and pull between wanting instant gratification and thinking about the long game. Sure, the money gives them a boost, but it doesn't magically make them full or keep them warm or guarantee their safety.
Right. And then, as if things weren't interesting enough, Mr. Beast throws them another curveball.
Hmm.
The chance to spend some of that hard-earned cash on survival gear. I mean, I'd be all over a fishing rod and a decent tarp. But they decide to be picky, only buy what they absolutely need.
And that's where things get really fascinating, psychologically speaking. See, they've already put in 2 days of intense hardship, uncertainty they're invested. So the thought of letting go of any potential reward, even to make their lives a little easier, that becomes a really complex calculation.
So it's like they're starting to value the challenge itself almost as much as the actual money.
Yeah, exactly. It's this fascinating look at how our perceptions of value change when we're pushed outside our comfort zones. It's not just about the tangible reward anymore. It's about proving something to themselves, testing their limits, seeing what they're truly capable of.
And just when, things were looking really rough, like they desperately need a win, boom, they stumble across a flowing creek, which anyone who's ever watched, like, a survival show knows that's huge.
Oh, absolutely. Talk
Mm.
about a morale booster. It's like suddenly they're not just reacting to this constant barrage of threats. They're actually starting to gain a little control over their environment.
It's like a weight off their shoulders,
Yeah.
and it gets even better. Because remember, they're starving at this point, right?
Yeah.
Well, they actually managed to catch something. An eel, I think it was.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can only imagine the relief, the satisfaction of finally having a proper meal
Yeah.
after days of basically nothing. And it might seem like a small thing, right? Catching one fish. But in that situation, it's huge. It reinforces their belief that they can do this, that they can survive.
Totally. And they don't stop there. I
Yeah.
mean, we're talking building a whole fishing dock, improving their shelter. These guys are like wilderness engineers at this point.
It's incredible. And, it really highlights that amazing human capacity for adaptation. When we're faced with a challenge, we're wired to find solutions, to innovate, to problem solve. But even with these victories, this is also when that constant pressure, the stress, it starts to get to them.
Yeah, the arguments. And we can't gloss over those, right? Because it starts to get kind of heated between them. Short fuses, disagreeing about strategy. They even split up for a while. It's obvious this whole pressure cooker environment is taking its toll.
Yeah, and that's something that's often overlooked, I think. We tend to focus on the physical challenges of survival, but the mental and emotional toll can be even more intense. We're social creatures. By nature, we need connection, support. And when you're deprived of that, even the strongest bonds can be tested.
So true. But then Enter Mr. Beast, the puppet master behind it all. And he pulls out this, like, heartstring tugging move.
Huh.
He surprises them with reunions with their families. I'm talking tears, hugs, full-on emotional breakdowns.
Wow. Talk about a powerful reminder of what really matters. I mean, this whole experience, it forced them to confront not just the elements, but also themselves,
Yeah,
their deepest fears, their desires, and then suddenly, boom, they're face to face with the people they love most in the world.
and you'd think, okay, that emotional high, that'll carry them through. But of course, the challenges keep coming. The weather warms up, which you'd think would be a good thing, but it actually brings a whole new set of problems. Snakes, rats, you name it.
Right. Like nature has a way of keeping you on your toes.
Yeah,
It doesn't care if you're having a good day or a bad day, the challenges keep on coming. It's this constant cycle of adaptation. Just when you think you've got a handle on things, the environment throws a curveball.
totally. And as if the creepy crawlies weren't enough, those arguments, yeah, they don't exactly disappear. In fact, I'd say the tension actually escalates, especially with that $1 million prize getting closer every day.
It makes sense, though, when you think about it. I mean, they're physically exhausted, mentally drained, and on top of that, they're dealing with the constant pressure of making decisions that could literally mean life or death.
Yeah.
It's no wonder their capacity to brush things off, to let small disagreements slide, it's practically non-existent at this point.
And so here they are, right? Worn down, but still going. But Haas, man, this guy's resourceful. Remember how Mr. Beast offered them a boat a while back? Well, Haas actually goes and builds his own little raft thing.
Wow, talk about taking matters into your own hands. That's actually a really great example of how they've grown throughout this challenge. They're not just waiting for someone to rescue them or give them handouts anymore. They're finding their own solutions, tapping into their own ingenuity.
Right, like, talk about a sense of accomplishment. But of course, Mr. Beast, he can't resist stirring the pot a little more. Just as they're celebrating their little raft, he shows up again. And this time, he's pulled out all the stops. A brand new boat, ready to go. And just to sweeten the deal, a feast from Zaxby's. I mean, come on.
Oh, I can practically smell the fried chicken through the screen. Talk about a dilemma, right? The allure of comfort, of immediate gratification, versus the satisfaction of sticking to their guns, seeing this crazy journey through to the end.
And you know what? They actually refuse. They turn down the boat, the Zaxby's, the whole shebang, choose to stick with their own creation, their own hard-won progress. That says a lot about the value they've come to place on self-reliance, on the resilience they've built together.
It really does. And it speaks to a fundamental human drive, too. That sense of accomplishment, of pride that comes from overcoming challenges through your own efforts. It's not just about the destination, it's about the journey, the struggles, the victories along the way.
Totally. But as the days turn into weeks and that prize money just keeps climbing higher and higher, you can see it starts to wear on Haas. He's got a family back home, a newborn son he's never even met. And you can see that internal struggle, that pull between his own personal desires and his commitment to Grizz to seeing this challenge through.
That's where the true cost of this experience really hits home, I think.
Hmm.
It's easy to get caught up in the money, the challenge itself. But at the end of the day, we're all human. We crave love, connection, that sense of belonging.
Yeah, for sure. And on day 73, it all comes to a head. Haas makes a decision. He takes the flare gun.
Wow, that's a loaded moment, right? It's the
Exactly.
culmination of all the stress, the longing, that constant internal battle he's been fighting.
He heads back to their original campsite, like that place where it all began, and you can
Mm,
just see the emotions on his face. It's
mm.
heartbreaking.
He's wrestling with so much guilt over potentially betraying his friend, the loyalty he feels, and then that overwhelming urge to just be back home in his own life. It's a decision a lot of us can probably relate to, even if the stakes aren't quite as high.
And Grizz, he knows something's up, right? He sees Haas coming, and he knows what's about to happen, braces himself for that conversation, for what he knows Haas needs to say.
And what unfolds is just. It's a testament to the strength of their bond. It's raw, it's honest, but ultimately it's about understanding, empathy.
Totally. There's no blame, no judgment. Grizz doesn't try to change Haas's mind or guilt him into staying. He just listens, acknowledges the pressure Haas is under, validates his feelings, and in that moment of unspoken